Albert, what in Green Pipe City are you doing to my controller?
Hey everyone! I'm Albert Boris. Okay, so this is probably the weirdest video idea I've ever had for this channel. But what if I were to try and beat Super Mario Bros. Wonder using only my feet? Even though it's only been a little over half a year since this game was released, this has gone on to become one of my new favorite Mario adventures of all time, for reasons that are not relevant to this video. However, one of the things that always struck me was just how easy it was. I mean, sure, I wasn't expecting another tropical freeze, but after how much earlier reviewers were hyping it up for being absolutely brutal, I could not have been more deceived. But that's when I realized maybe they were just using their other pair of hands to play the game, if you know what I mean. So you know what, I'm gonna try to make it harder for myself as well. But don't worry, I'm gonna use some fresh Burgundy socks for this challenge. After all, I don't want my controller to become a fungi mine, am I right? Okay, that was terrible. But yeah, and also, just in case you think the footage is rigged and I actually have my hands in these socks, I don't. Anyway, so the rules are simple. If I can play the entire game and beat the final boss using my feet only, this challenge is a success. However, I'm gonna try to beat as many levels as possible to make it more interesting.
Man, you've really ran out of video ideas this time, haven't you?
Oh, shut up, Virgil. But yeah, I'm Albert Boris, and with all of that being said, let's get started. Opening up with the game's first world, Plateau, I decided to first change up a few of the game's controls, to make the experience a bit more bearable, because I will not be able to ground pound with the shoulder buttons. The first level was pretty easy peasy, but it gave me practice for what to expect for future levels. Because I have much less dexterity in my toes than my fingers, obviously, running and jumping at the same time is much harder now. It is slightly possible if I try resting two toes on both buttons, but it's far more dangerous as I can more easily lose control. So let's hope I won't have to do that too much. The second level, Piranha Plants on Parade, was also pretty easy. I thought avoiding the piranha plants would be a bit of a nightmare, but they weren't really bothersome. I just had to jump whenever they passed under me. Because of how easy it was, I even decided to opt for the secret exit as well, just because why not? The third level, Scramskadaddlers, was also very straightforward. Easiest wonder effect of my life. After that, it was time for the Plateau section of Plateau, and Here Comes the Bull Rush was another very simple level, with another easy secret exit as well. As long as I jumped whenever the Bull Rush were about to charge me, there were no issues. Next, Here Comes the Hoppos, however, was probably the first somewhat tough challenge. Not only were there far more places to fall off from this time, but bouncing off of the Hoppos was its own can of worms, as I had much less control over where I'd land. I even got my first game over on this playthrough here. On the whole, it wasn't too bad, but it was a bit more annoying. Next up was the Roller Koopa Derby, which was another easy level. I was lucky to be able to equip myself with a fire flower early on, so I could just fire away most of the incoming Koopa Troopas. I also decided to have a go at the first Parachute Badge challenge. Now, for the most part, I'm mostly just going to be playing regular levels for this challenge, but I figured since World 1 would still be generally easy, why not try everything here? I thought this one would be impossible because there's no way I'm going to be able to use these shoulder buttons while also having to move and jump, but actually, I was able to beat this one without gliding a single time. I just had to run and jump at the right time, so well, what do you know, this one's possible in more than 2 ways. Next, it was time for the first Wiggler Race level, and this was probably the easiest level yet. The whole stage was perfectly laid out to be straightforward for speedrunning purposes, without any super difficult jumps or frustrating enemy placements, so I was able to run fearlessly for most of the time, and get most jumps without problem. After that, I decided to have a go at the wall climb jump challenge, since I figured this would probably be the most useful badge possible in this run, and as expected, it was a cakewalk. After that, Angry Spikes and Sinking Pipes was another relatively doable level with another easy wonder effect. Swamp Pipe Crawl took a bit more time than usual because of how narrow a lot of its pipe platforms were, but it was manageable enough. Now, Bull Rush Express though. Jesus Christ. Trying to keep up with the Bull Rush while also having to dodge enemies and blocks is a lot harder than it sounds, because guess what? I can't both run and jump as efficiently when I'm using my feet. At one point, I had to quickly jump off of the sheep, immediately toss the power block, and then get up as fast as possible to not get left behind. And then at the very end, I had to be super careful to not accidentally run into the sheep either. Also, I had to complete this level 2 times because I forgot to stock up on an elephant fruit, which is necessary for the secret exit, so that was fun. After that, Springs in the Twilight Forest was another harder level, since I couldn't really see anything, but I was able to get through it, even if the wonder effect can die for all I care. Cosmic Hoppos was surprisingly not that bad. I mean, sure, there was still a lot of bouncing, but it was much easier to plan around since the enemies were more easily avoidable, and the Hoppos were usually put in places where they wouldn't really get in the way. And the Pipe Rock Plateau Palace was also easy. No obtuse platforming, it was just carefully walking along for the most part. And the boss was super easy as well due to Bowser Jr.'s large hitboxes. And with that, the first world is finally complete. Or well, almost. While I was at it, I decided to beat every remaining break time and badge challenge left, and besides the Koa arena with its annoying to time piranha plants, they were all very easy too. The Jet Run badge challenge especially, I mean, you just ran without having to push the B button, and that's a huge blessing for this challenge. But yeah, that marks Pipe Rock Plateau fully completed. And that sure took a while. But before we can go to the next world, we have to get through some Petal Isles stages. Surely, this won't be too bad, right? Well, the first level I tried was the Dolphin Kick Badge Challenge, which I thought would go really badly because of what I said earlier about shoulder buttons. But actually, I only had to use one toe on the ZR button and the other on my L stick, and I breezed through. And same for Leaping Smackerel. The jumping fish were a bit scary at first, but they were actually kinda slow, so if I just sped through everything, they had no chance of catching me, thanks to the badge. And the Robert Cove was also easy, even if the Wonder Effect was pretty scary, with the currents almost sending me into the urchins. Finally, there was Bluebird Roost, which was also pretty easy. Trying to not get hit by whatever it is that these birds are blowing was a bit scary, but it was fairly predictable. But anyways, now let's finally go to Fluff-Puff Peaks. We'll be back at Petal Isles soon, but not yet. Out My Way Valley was shockingly annoying for being the first level in this world. I kept getting crushed by the ice blocks from above, or I just kept running into enemies due to the ice physics. So I figured that my best strategy was just to keep running and jumping and hoping for the best. It took well over 10 lives, with the secret exit included, but better late than never. Thankfully, most of the following levels, however, were surprisingly easy. Pokepedia Pass, Condarts Away, Pole Block Passage, and up and down with puffy lifts, I were able to beat without too many problems. Sadly, jump 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 was not possible. Even if you thankfully don't die when you fall down, trying to keep up with the beat blocks while also having to do precise jumping just isn't possible, no matter how much I tried. I was only able to get a little over halfway through before I decided that was enough. Thankfully, the break times were also pretty easy so far. Kick It Out My Way was as straightforward as it can be, and so was Cloud Cover. Puzzling Park had virtually no platforming at all, and the Koa Arena was actually easier than the one in Pipe Rock Plateau, thanks to how overpowered the Bubble Flower is. And the Floating High Jump Challenge was very easy too, as long as you had patience. Now, as for Wall Climb Jump 2... yeah... this. Let's continue on. Next is the first airship level, although I needed a little break first because at this point my right foot was really starting to get tired.
One day later.
Alright, back to business. So the first flying battleship stage was actually also a cakewalk. Yeah, I was a bit worried that it being an auto-scroller meant I'd constantly have to keep up the pace, but because of how slow it was, it could barely be constituted as a challenge at all. And the boss battle was just running. Wow. Cruising with linking lifts was also fairly easy, even though I made quite a few stupid mistakes. And countdown to drop down, while somewhat stressful, was also no problem for me, since I was able to hijack Lakitu's Cloud quite a few times. But then we got the Fluff-Puff Peaks Palace, and it was so picky. I mean, the first half wasn't too bad, it was mostly just avoiding a few skeleton piranha plants here and there. But then the Wonder Flower came, and I wanted to make a skeleton out of the cartridge. Good thing I bought this game digitally. It's similar to the one from the Twilight Forest stage, in which you suddenly grow 50 feet and make yourself vulnerable. So I had to keep crouching in order to hit as little as possible. Oh, but you can't get off that easily, because you also have to run away from more piranha plants that are following you, and random fire projectiles that just spawn in from nowhere. And like I said previously, this wouldn't be so bad if I wasn't using my feet. Thankfully, the boss was pretty easy, but I'm happy to be over with this. And that wraps up World 2. Only 2 to potentially 3 levels weren't possible. Unfortunately, I can't reach the Spring Feet challenge, but this was definitely harder than the first world. Hopefully, Shining Falls is gonna be more merciful. But before that, we're finally back for some more levels in the Petal Isles. First up is Dolphin Kick Badge 2, which, like the first one, was also pretty easy. It was a bit more challenging since I had to be quick in order to not be crushed by these blocks, but it was short enough. but then came Wigglery swimming. I'll be honest, this was probably my most worried level yet, and I was this sure that it would be the end of my challenge. I had to keep alternating between dolphin kicking with the shoulder button, and then as soon as I get on land, put my toes on the run and jump button, and repeat. It was so stressful, having to constantly switch my playstyles. But surprisingly, I was able to beat it on my first try, and I have no idea how. Boy was I relieved about that though. And Downpour Uproar went fine as well. Mashing A to keep swimming upwards was super annoying, and I didn't want to use the dolphin kick badge as it was a little hard to aim, but the level was manageable. Now, let's finally go to Shining Falls, and I have to say, never have I ever been so happy about the fact that this world is so short. Like, I'll be honest, this was easily the least trouble I've ever had in this challenge overall so far. For the Hoppycat trial, I just needed a little patience to not run into the Hoppycats. Other than that, it was easy. The Anglefish trial was a bit annoying since the stupid fish kept aiming to hit me, and the Wonder Effect required some precise timing for jumps, but other than that, I made it through as well. After that, it was all a cakewalk, or well, besides the search party. Trying to look for all of the hidden blocks took so much time because I had to be careful not to fall off, and I already talked about the dread of swimming up waterfalls. But besides that, everything else went straightforward. For the crouch jumping challenge, I just waited until the enemies moved in close on me, and then jumped over them. The midway trial was a piece of cake, since I had the aforementioned badge now, and could just crouch jump up each platform. And the Sharp trial was just a waiting game, occasionally having to jump over certain enemies. And the Sugar Star trial, I think this one just speaks for itself. Surely, the final trial had to be difficult though, right?
Nope.
It was basically one of those auto levels from Mario Maker, where I only had to sometimes jump. Easiest level in the whole challenge. And that's all of Shining Falls. I was gonna mention this as well, but the break times were all easy to deal with as well. I thought the timer ones would be stressful, but there was enough of those blocks to reset the timer that I made it through safely. And just like that, I finished World 3 in just 56 minutes. Wow, this is my favorite world now. With half of the game completed already, we've got one half left to go. Although it gets a bit interesting now, as the game actually allows you to play worlds 4 to 6 in any order you'd like. So how should I play them?
With your hands, sicko.
No, I meant in which order I should proceed with them.
Well, start with World 4, obviously.
But I don't want to do the best one first. Tell you what, let's flip a coin. If it lands on heads, we go to World 5. If tails, we go to World 6.
But what about World...
Begin. Never mind, it fell off the edge.
Well, great. What are you gonna do now?
Maybe I'll just finish up the remainder of Petal Isles. I gotta finish that sooner or later anyways. So next up was Jewel Blockade, which was a very straightforward level. It's the introduction of the Drill Mushroom power-up, which was and would turn out to be very useful in this run. Not only did it protect me from enemies falling onto me, but I could also just breeze through it by going underground. The Wonder Effect was really nerve-wracking though, even if it was still easy. The Petal Isles battleship was a bit annoying to say the least. The whole level is largely navigated by hopping into these Lakitu clouds, but the problem is they disappear after a while, so I had to keep jumping into new ones, which forced me to be really precise. It wasn't awful, at least there was no running involved, but it got really nerve-wracking considering this is an auto-scroller. Thankfully, Mama Mouthful was a cakewalk, literally. And Gnosher Lair was, again, scary, but it could be worse. Muncher Fields had two sides to it. The first half involved running over munchers with a superstar, which got super nerve-wracking, since my stars weren't unlimited, and I had to be quick and precise with getting new ones. But the second half was very easy, as I was just waiting on these platforms. Oh, and then it was time for the boosting spin jump badge challenge. Never was I so prepared to just give up, because how would I run, jump, and spin jump all using only my feet? But you know what, fine, I was willing to give it a chance. I figured that if I ran and jumped and then immediately shifted my toes to the shoulder button so that I could spin jump, I could maybe do it. And well, I was right. I made it through the whole level with this technique, in no less than 5 tries as well. Granted, this stage was really straightforward in its layout, but I'm still blown away. Then it was, the final Wiggleries, and it was annoying. I knew it would be possible since I had just done the swimming one earlier, which was harder, but that didn't make this less frustrating. Even though it was straightforward, it just never seemed to end, and I knew that any mistake would undoubtedly result in my loss. And there was a shocking amount of trial and error as well, as there kept being enemies in my way. Thankfully, however, Koa Arena has the Bubble Flower. The end. Alright, now let's do Sunbaked Desert. We're a little over halfway done with the challenge now, so I wanted to take a moment and talk about just how shockingly easy this has been so far. And I wish I was joking actually. I thought this would be super difficult to get through since I've never used my feet for anything other than walking, but as you can see, only 3 levels haven't been possible so far. Maybe I just overestimated all of this, but I hope the difficulty is gonna step up soon. Anyways, enough yapping. Onward to Rezier we go now. And this is where things were starting to get a little more tricky. The cool thing about Sunbaked Desert is that unlike all the other world maps, this one is almost entirely open world, meaning we're free to complete these levels in any order we'd like. Which one will we walk into first? The second parachute badge challenge. I've been dreading this one. Sure, I may have been able to get through the mid-air spin challenge, but using the same technique here is much less guaranteed because of how extreme some of these jumps are. But you know what? Fine. I'll give it a try. Yes, very nice. Nope. Alright, second try. How the fuck? Okay, so this time I was able to get through the corridor without hitting the plant, so that's cool, but... Oh! Hey, maybe I'll get through this. Okay, this is definitely possible. Are you freaking... Yes! Yes! Okay, so I didn't get the top of the flagpole, but I did it! Honestly, this was a more fun challenge than I imagined. Alright, next up, let's hit these blocks so we can go ahead and do rolling ball haul. This one was much more effortless than I first thought it would be. The spike balls were easy to jump over, and the wonder effect was just running in straight lines and sometimes jumping. Then Armads on roll came, and I wanted to sunbake this whole game. Getting through slow quicksand is one thing, but having to avoid charging Armads at the same time? And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Because then I also had to somehow throw a honeypot at the seeds to spawn the wonder flower. Which was a lot harder than it sounds because I kept accidentally throwing them too early or in the completely wrong direction. I mean, how am I supposed to aim with my toe? And that's when I realized I could have just used the flutter jump badge. But oh, if only the story ended there. Because the wonder effect itself is that the whole stage gets sped up. And I had to be so careful not running into anything. It was agonizing. But at least the worst is done now. And then for the next level, the desert mystery, I realized they could have just used a drill form to breeze past everything. Why didn't I think of that before? And the ninja jump part was even easier since there were practically no hazards or pitfalls at all. Blooms of the beautiful desert skis had, you guessed it, a lot of blooms, which meant I bounced around like an idiot everywhere. But it wasn't that bad since I could blow up the blooms with my fire flower, and I also just got kinda lucky. And Valley full of snoodles was also pretty straightforward, even with the occasional trampolines. And thank god the wonder effect actually made things slow down, since it made it easier for me to think through my actions. Crouching high jump 2 was a bit scary since I had to be quick and agile, but it was short enough. Much unlike the next level, Color Switch Dungeon. This wasn't hard per se, but it was just so long and never seemed to end. Probably because it's a more puzzle-based stage that is more backtracking, but it took me well over 10 minutes. Partly because I also kept running into these worms. Thankfully, Secrets of Shava Mansion was much faster, and somehow, so was Flight of the Blooms. This one was much harder than the other bloom level because, guess what? This time I had to use the blooms as platforms to jump over gaps. What could possibly go wrong? Well, apparently, nothing. Yeah, the whole thing about crossing gaps was actually just the start. And while it took its time, after that it was a shocking cakewalk. Probably because the wonder effect made me skip like half the stage. And I thought the invisibility badge challenge would go super badly too, but as long as I took it slowly and looked for the trail left by Luigi, I was able to make it through. And now it was time for the palace. Oh my god. This was so unpredictably chaotic. At first, it wasn't too bad, or well, I still had to narrowly avoid these fire bars and jump over this spike ball while in quicksand, but you know what, it was fine. But then it was already time for the wonder effect, very early on in the stage, which caused the whole level to keep alternating between speeding up and slowing down. At least for Armads on roll, if I took it slowly, I could make it through unscathed without too many issues. But here I had to constantly be on the move because enemies randomly spawned in, fire bars are located 5 inches from each other with no time to spare, and suddenly a spike ball was rushing towards me out of nowhere. Somehow I was still able to make through all of this on my first try, and I have no idea how. I guess the stage was generous with items at least, but man. And then the boss battle came and it was even worse. You know how annoying it is to keep mashing A to swim with your toe? Now do that, except you're also getting chased. And if you accidentally fall out in the later phases, you're gonna sustain a hit. Again, I was still somehow able to do it all in one try, but wow, an actually difficult boss. And with that, the Sunbaked desert has finally been baked. Oh yeah, and by the way, every single break time, co-arena and search party was also completely possible. Rever run was a bit stressful because I had to be quicker than the Rever, while also precise, and hitting the melon piranha plants with honeypots took its time, but I made it through. Overall, this world was moderately challenging, but still generally easy to get through. Now to get some sleep.
6.5 hours later.
Alright, so newsflash, but it appears my Burgundy socks weren't up for the challenge, as some parts of them have been overstrained.
Will he figure out it was actually me?
So, I choose you, gaming socks, instead. Don't you fail on me. Anyways, on to World 5's Fungi mines. Insert lame foot joke. Please give me a real challenge. Maybe it's just that I've gotten better over time at this, but this world I was beating even faster than Shining Falls in just 53 minutes. Even if it was also harder in many ways. The first level, up shroom down shroom, wasn't too bad. The fact that the stage offers you multiple drill mushrooms meant that I could dig into the ground and avoid most of the enemies, even if there were also more pitfalls in the latter half. But oh my god, Tail's toxic pond almost brought out a toxic side in me I didn't know. Because you see, on one hand, I had to take it slowly to not get hit by the Tail's spike balls, but I also realized that the safest way across was by swinging myself between them. Just one problem, I have to hold down the run button to do that. So much for taking it slowly. And this was especially stressful in the latter half, where you had these rotating blocks prepared to betray me. Eventually, I just decided to make a run for it, seeing as I was fully powered up, but yeah, the drill mushroom wasn't of any particular help otherwise. It was even time for my second game over, which was probably about time. After that though, most of Fungi mines was manageable. Light Switch Mansion, are you f***ing kidding me? Okay, besides that slip up, it was easy, as long as I took it slowly and paid attention to where the platforms were. Next, Beware the Rifts actually had me a bit worried at first where I had to cross this huge gap, but then I realized I was supposed to spawn these pipes in. Otherwise, it was just about taking it slowly again. And the Wonder Effect with Rift Mario was actually much easier than I expected it to be. Because it copies my exact movements, it doesn't matter how slow I am, and the addition of POW blocks to slow him down even more made it even more doable. Now it was time for the temple levels, and actually this is where the game got even easier. Wobba Ruins was incredibly slow paced because of the sluggish scoop, but once again, taking it easy proved to be the best strategy. Swaying Ruins was a bit of a hassle for the Wonder Effect since my timing had to be precise, but otherwise the level itself was fairly easy to breeze through. But oh boy, can the Grappling Vine badge challenge go screw itself. You know, the other badges that also required shoulder buttons were challenging enough, but compared to this, at least they had rather simple button combinations. Now I had to run, jump, shoulder button, and then jump again in the opposite direction. It was so much to think about with only my feet, and it only got worse as the platforms you had to hold on to started moving. I almost accidentally restarted the stage at one point because I was just mashing everything at once. Somehow I got through it, but oh man, I am dreading the second challenge now. The Ko arena was fine though. Nothing super easy, but as I've said numerous times in the past, patience is key. And actually, the final Uncharted area, Poison Ruins, was another easy final level. You'd think the rising lava would be more stressful this time, and while it kinda was, that whole section was so short that I barely noticed it. The Wonder Effect was a bit long, but again, my good friend Patience is very patient. Also, the break times were so easy I forgot to talk about them. But wow, that's World 5 done with. A bit harder than Worlds 1 and 3, but if the game isn't gonna rack up in difficulty soon, I'm gonna quit this challenge prematurely.
A few moments later.
Okay, I didn't mean that challenging. World 6's Deep Magma Bog, which is up next, had some of the most sadistic stages in the entire game, and if it weren't for the experience I had from the previous worlds, this would have driven me insane. But you know, let's start nice and simple with this area's search party. Compared to the other ones, this one is less about finding obscure hiding spots and more about using the game's power-ups to your advantage. But while the platforming was harder as a result, it was still really easy. Floating High Jump 2 was really hard since I had to do some pretty precise and big jumps by running, but thankfully it was over fairly quickly. Anyways, let's do some regular levels now though. 6-1s, where the Rumbas rule, was another underground drill mushroom stage, which meant I could breeze through the whole thing no problem. And the Rarg in the ruins was one of the levels of all time. Seriously, the whole gimmick is just that these platforms appear when I look at them, which had no effect on my skills with the toes. Or well, okay, this rotating platform was a bit hard, but that's because it was spinning around. And similarly, I had no greater issues with Pull, Tug and Burn either, despite being a 4-star level. And also, remember what I said about dreading the second vine grappling challenge? Well, believe it or not, but it was actually way easier, because this time, you had these zip tracks, which did the jumping for me. But it all went downhill from there. Let me introduce you all to the second mid-air spin challenge. On one hand, it's already hard as it is to run, jump and then shoulder button. So let's do that again, except now you also have these bouncy spinning triangles moving up and down. How the actual am I supposed to get through all of this? There was so much to think about all at once. I kept bouncing off into the lava, forgetting to shoulder button, or it took too long to make a decision. Excluding the 2 Impossible World 2 stages, this was by far the most egregious stage I tortured myself through. And yeah, I did beat it, eventually, but never again. And then it was Deep Magma Bog Flying Battleship time, and somehow it was almost just as bad. The auto-scrolling was way faster than the other airships, I had to be super careful not to accidentally get down from these poles, and even the boss was surprisingly nerve-wracking because I had to repel the fire from the Bowser statue to even get onto him. It was still possible, even if I almost game overed again. Surprisingly, the rest of Deep Magma Bog was way easier. Hot 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 forced me to do some precise jumping for the secret exit, and I needed to have patience with these fire blocks, but otherwise it was really easy. Spike's Magma Tube was incredibly short, so as long as I learned the timing of this coaster and when to jump, I made it through. And Dragon Boneyard was so slow-paced and simple, it took me less than 4 minutes to beat, with no death. And then there's the final 3 Expert Badge challenges. Yeah, can we really call them expert at this point? Yet to Run 2 was easy for the same reason the first one was. The badge just makes you run for you. Even Invisibility 2 was over before I knew it, as most of the jumps there were generously small to cross. And that's not to mention all of the clouds that show you where you are. Now, Spring Feet 2 was actually fairly worrisome, since I wasn't able to play the first one, so no experience, and the jumps were actually absurdly huge. But then I realized that as long as I perfectly timed them, I could rush through here as well. Also, going back, I think this probably soft confirms the first Spring Feet challenge possible too, even if I couldn't reach it. Following another easy break time and another co-arena with bubble flowers, and it was only the palace we had left here. And wow. I mean, okay, the Wonder Effect forced me to be kinda careful, but otherwise this was so perfectly laid out to just be sped run through. And while the boss wasn't a breeze exactly, at least there was no goddamn swimming. And that's the penultimate world done with already. Yeah, this one was a bit weird, because on one hand, 2 of the levels were so barbaric they put the pachinko machine to shame, but once again, the rest were really straightforward. I guess all we have to do now is go on to Castle Bowser, the final world. Oh, so now we're getting consistently difficult. Where was that challenge when I wanted it? Yeah, so Castle Bowser, despite being the shortest one, at only 5 stages, was the first time I was actually struggling throughout the ride. Nothing was quite as sadistic as this, but all areas were fairly hard, even the first level, Missile Meg Mayhem. This one was kind of what I expected Flight of the Blooms to be, with lots of huge gaps you had to traverse with enemies. Fortunately, the Missile Megs were long, but because of how fast they were, it was still a bit of a challenge to get onto them, especially during the Wonder Effect when you had to go up as well. High Voltage Gauntlet was easy as soon as I got the metal form, but before that, it was one of the game's most hazardous stages, with all the electricity I have to avoid everywhere. And Evade the Seeker builds, well, there were plenty of narrow platforms, and the Seeker builds, while usually few, were still scary, even if I avoided most of them. And then Bowser's Blazing Beats was its own league of frantic. This one was all about the timing. Jump at the wrong moment and you're gonna lose. Don't run fast enough, you're gonna lose. Don't keep up with the auto-scrolling, you're gonna f***ing lose. But eventually, after 15 minutes, I made it through, even with my 5th and final game over of the run. And so, we only had Bowser's Rage stage left, and surprisingly, this was the least troublesome level in this world. The auto-scrolling segment was a bit intense at first, with all the different wonder effects spawning in on you, but aside from the one where you had to quickly climb up the poles, it was fairly slow-paced. And then the final boss came, and you know there's something wrong with the last showdown, when even with my feet, I had 0 problems. Seriously, it was just jumping around a little, hitting Bowser's chin, and BAM! Now we just gotta get over with the second phase and oh yeah, never mind. We did it! So, is it possible to beat Super Mario Bros. Wonder using only your feet? Very much yes. Honestly, I'm kinda surprised that only 2 levels weren't possible and that they were early in the game too. Other than that, this was a way more fun challenge than I could have ever hoped for it to be, even if I'm still disappointed by how easy it was.
Dude, you're not finished yet. You haven't even played the special world yet.
Okay, fair, maybe those stages are the kind of brutal I need, but the objective of this challenge was just to beat Bowser, not 100% the whole game, which, you know, isn't possible.
No, do it. You want this.
What? You've been against this video from the start, why are you trying to sway me now? Just say you want this.
Fine, I want this.
Then do it yourself. But yeah, that's about it for this video, and by the way, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all. I hope this challenge was a fun little gift from me to you all, and stay tuned for more videos on my channel. Let me know if you want me to do more challenges, and if perhaps those include other videos where I play with my feet too. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and follow me on my Discord server, Green Pipe City, as well as Twitter and Patreon for more updates. And with all of that being said, I'm signing off. Until next time.